Title: No one believed the Deathworld lies until a human proved them true. HFY sci-fi story. The Zenthari High Council scoffed at the ancient myths, tales for hatchlings, they said, as glowing archives spun legends of Terra. The so-called Deathworld, according to the old stories, it was a place of burning skies, oceans that could drown cities, creatures made of teeth and claws, and apex predators so relentless they never slept. But of course, such a place couldn't exist. No intelligent species could rise from that. Until the day one walked into the Hall of Concord. She wasn't particularly tall by galactic standards. No horns, no bioplasma exosuit, just flesh, soft skin, 2 legs, 2 eyes, piercing, calculating. She smiled, which some delegates mistook for friendliness. That was their first mistake. Her name was Commander Ilara Voss, a representative of the United Terran Accord. The Galactic Concord had only recently detected humanity's FTL signature, a minor anomaly, they thought, a low-tier civilization finally crawling into the stars. Ilara arrived alone. She stepped onto the central platform, surrounded by hundreds of representatives from countless worlds. The hall buzzed with skepticism. The Kuruk ambassador leaned over to his neighbor and muttered, "Another species pretending to be dangerous. Watch, she'll start bragging about her homeworld next." Ilara tapped her wrist console. The lights dimmed. A 3D map bloomed into the air, Terra. The projection spun, showcasing ecosystems of extremes, sub-zero tundras, molten lava lakes, hurricane zones, acid swamps teeming with life. "Terra," she said, her voice calm and steady, "is where I'm from. Class 12 survival rating. Gravity, 1.0 g. Atmosphere, nitrogen-oxygen mix. Predators, too many to count. Intelligent species, 1. Survivors, us." The Jarathi Chancellor chittered. "You expect us to believe your species evolved on a world like that and thrived?" Ilara turned to him. "No, I expect you to prepare." A flick of her fingers revealed combat footage. Not simulations, real battles. Humans dragging wounded across craters, fighting through firestorms, boarding alien dreadnoughts with knives and jury-rigged plasma cutters. A silence swept the room. Then came the recordings from Terra itself, a diver wrestling a shark the size of a shuttle, a biologist bottle-feeding a venomous snake, children playing beside carnivorous plants and laughing. The worst part? They weren't afraid. "Your world breeds monsters," hissed the Skari envoy. "If what you say is true, you are not diplomats, you are harbingers." Ilara nodded. "That's correct." She walked to the center of the council floor. "We didn't come here to conquer, but understand this, we're not here to beg either. The myths you dismissed weren't lies, they were warnings. You laughed at stories of creatures who could rip through whole metal with their bare hands, of species who adapted faster than you could classify them. Those stories were about us. Is this a threat?" Someone called. "No," Ilara said, her voice cold now. "It's a reminder." They dismissed her again, of course. Until the Threx Armada came. The Threxians were galaxy-scouring parasites, planet killers. One fleet could erase a civilization in days. The Concord begged for help. Their fleets were decimated, their colonies consumed. Only one response came. From Terra. When the humans arrived, they didn't send fleets of grand, slow battleships. They dropped strike teams. They dropped people. 100,000 human soldiers in exoframes. They didn't fight like the Concord. They fought like Deathworlders, fast, brutal, unrelenting. While other species retreated under fire, humans advanced. They destroyed the Threxians not just with weapons, but with willpower. They took what the enemy threw at them and got back up. The last Threx flagship fell in orbit over Drazik Prime. And standing on its scorched hull was a human flag, burnt, tattered, but upright. The Concord never questioned the old legends again. Now, they record new ones with names, Voss, Terra, humanity. No longer dismissed as myth. Because a human proved the Deathworld lies were true, and then she smiled. End. Part 2, and then they asked the humans to lead. They had laughed at her, once. Now, every major species in the Galactic Concord sent envoys to Terra, sometimes to negotiate, sometimes to plead. The Threxian War had ended in 3 Terran months, not through superior technology, but through sheer stubborn survival. The Deathworlders did not just win, they broke the unbreakable. And Commander Ilara Voss, the woman they once mocked, now sat at the head of the Unified Security Council. She wore the same black jacket, the same boots, no ceremonial robes, no jewelry, just a pistol on her hip and a glare that could split titanium. Ambassador Krelek of the Votharii stood to speak. With the Threxians defeated, we urged Terra to disarm its military presence on the border worlds. Your soldiers frighten our citizens. Ilara leaned forward slowly. Good. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. You misunderstand, she continued, steel in her voice. Fear isn't our goal, but it is our warning. We remember who was left standing when the monsters came. Ambassador Krelek bristled. You imply the Concord is weak. No, Ilara said, rising. I state it. Later, in the silence of the orbital station overlooking Terra, a junior officer approached her. Ma'am, he asked nervously, why do we keep helping them? They didn't believe us. They didn't trust us. They only call when they're dying. Ilara watched the blue-green world rotate below. Because we remember what it's like to be alone, she said softly. Before we left Terra, we were always alone, surrounded by things bigger, meaner, older, and we learned survival means helping even those who don't deserve it. Because one day, they'll become strong too. The officer nodded, unsure. But, Ilara added darkly, don't mistake kindness for weakness. We extend a hand with one arm, and hold a weapon with the other. That's the way of a Deathworlder. What the Concord didn't realize was that Terra was only the first of many such worlds. Scouts had found others, not as deadly, perhaps, but still brutal, and some had life, primitive now, but promising. Humanity had plans, uplift, protect, learn, and teach. But above all, prepare. Because if one thing was certain in this galaxy, it was this: there's always something worse coming. And when it does, when the stars scream again, the galaxy will look to humanity. The species that came from hell. And survived smiling. To be continued. Want part 3? Something worse arrives. And this time, even humans flinch. Part 3. Even the Deathworlders looked to the skies in silence. The signal came from beyond the mapped stars. Not a distress call. Not a transmission. Not even sound. It was pressure. A gravitational whisper that bent entire sectors off course. Stars pulsed irregularly. Black holes stirred as if in pain. Whole systems simply went dark. And then came the first scream. It echoed through subspace, a ripple that crashed into neural implants, fried AI cores, shattered psychic relay species into fits of madness. Billions died without a weapon fired. Humanity didn't speak. They moved. The Galactic Concord begged for a name. Earth gave it one, the silence beyond fire. It had no ships, no soldiers, just hunger. It folded dimensions like paper. It moved sideways through time, and where it passed, nothing remained. Not even death. On the edge of the Perseus expanse, a Terran forward base caught the first glimpse. A sun, imploding in reverse. Planets unraveling into lattice strings. And then, a voice inside every Terran skull, not words, but feelings. You were forged by chaos, now drown in stillness. Ilara Voss stood at the bridge of the dreadnought Hammer of Dawn, watching stars blink out like dying embers. She didn't blink. Bring the Titans online, she ordered. The Titan protocol had been a myth. Planet-sized AI warforms, semi-sapient, forged from asteroid cores and old god machines. Even humanity feared them. Only 3 had ever been built. Now, all 3 awoke. Their eyes lit with solar fire. The galaxy watched in terror as the humans called their monsters. Titan 1 Ajax deployed on the ruins of Arcturus Prime. Titan 2 Nemesis stood silent, its hull etched with the names of every Terran lost in the last war. Titan 3 Omen, never activated, now stirred beneath the ice of Europa, its mind still half dreaming. The Titans roared into the void. And the silence beyond fire answered. Not with weapons. But with unbeing. Titan 1 disintegrated mid-charge. Not destroyed, erased. Memories, metal, soul, gone. The galaxy flinched. But humanity did not retreat. On a secure Terran uplink, a transmission pulsed. We are not Deathworlders because we were fearless. We are Deathworlders because we knew what fear felt like, and chose to keep walking. Ilara stepped into her dropship. A general now, a symbol, a relic of old scars and earned terror. Behind her stood the second wave, 10 billion Terran combatants, soldiers, biowar specialists, exorcists, singularity engineers, death cult AI priests, and void-trained psychers. We go, she whispered, not because we think we'll win. She turned toward the stars, where the universe folded in on itself. But because someone must show it we remember how to fight back. The last transmission from Earth read. To the silence, you want stillness? Come take it from our burning hands. Then Terra went quiet. But for the first time in galactic history, it wasn't the humans the galaxy feared. It was what might happen if the humans lost. To be continued. Want part 4? Humanity enters the void itself, where physics dies and willpower becomes weapon. Part 4, Into the mouth of the void, with fire in their eyes. The stars bent as the fleet crossed the threshold. They called it the Event Horizon Breach, a rip in causality itself, where time stuttered, light recoiled, and consciousness bled into geometry. The silence beyond fire was no empire, no god, no army. It was a state of existence, a force that had unmade empires before history had language. And humanity, insane, stubborn, glorious humanity, went in after it. Chrono entry log, -00:00:00. Commander Ilara Voss stood inside the core chamber of the Hammer of Dawn 2, where physics still obeyed. Behind her, soldiers kneeled in final prayer, not to gods, but to each other. Final hugs, final breath checks. One man carved the words "Do it" scared into his armor plate with a plasma torch. Ilara looked at the clock. It was already after the moment of entry. We're inside, whispered her tactical AI. The breach doesn't begin, it always was. We're catching up to it. The silence was not empty. It watched. Ships peeled open like flowers in bloom, crews screaming as they relived every moment of regret in infinite loop. One squadron was found frozen mid-motion, each soldier locked in a moment of terror that hadn't happened yet. But the humans adapted. They always did. They sealed their minds behind neural firewalls, rerouted emotion through battle AIs, and trained in dreams where time was non-linear. They remembered how to suffer efficiently. In the depths of the void, the first Terran victory came. Not through guns. Through resistance. A void entity descended on Strike Team Raven, an abstract monstrosity made of memory and hunger. It whispered all their failures at once. Mothers they didn't save, screams they ignored, friends they couldn't carry. It broke every species before. But Raven's squad had trained on Terra. They had died in simulations so real their hearts stopped. They had come back grinning. And when the entity tried to feed, they fed it their pain until it choked. Then they buried it under a nuke inside a folded reality grenade. One Terran walked out alive. She was smiling. Meanwhile, the Titans still moved. Titan 2 Nemesis dragged a dying star behind it, using it as a lance. Titan 3 Omen activated something older than language, a song, carved into Europa's ice, that made the void twitch. The silence began to change. Not retreat. Not attack. It learned. And then it spoke. Why do you persist? What are you? You are not gods, not even monsters. Ilara Voss answered, her voice echoing across subspace cracks. We are what crawled out of the fire when even monsters burned. We are children of a world that hated us. And we loved it anyway. You don't scare us. You never did. But if you want to end us, come and bleed for it. The final push began. Terran minds, linked by quantum empathy chains. Warrior poets hurling weaponized emotion. Ships fueled by paradox reactors, burning reality itself to move. They weren't trying to destroy the silence. They were trying to teach it. What it meant to feel. To fight. to lose, and stand back up. And then, in a moment that cannot be measured, the silence screamed. Not in pain. In understanding. The unmaking stopped. Reality folded itself closed like a healing wound. And where the humans had gone, they left scars on the dark. Only one ship returned. Charred. Silent. Its hull bore one message, scrawled in scorched Terran script. The dark learned what light is. Don't let it forget. Part 5. They returned from the silence, but not alone. Finale. The stars sighed when the Terrans came back. Only one ship emerged from the void. Not a dreadnought, not a Titan, just a scarred corvette, barely holding atmosphere. Its hull was warped, angles that didn't align, surfaces that shimmered like they remembered being something else. And inside, they found them. The humans. But not quite. Ilara Voss walked off the ramp first. She still looked human. Her uniform was torn, face soot-smudged, but her eyes no longer matched any human database. One burned like Terran sunrise. The other reflected constellations that didn't exist yet. Behind her came others. Warriors, engineers, scientists, survivors. And something with them. A shimmer in the air, a shadow that cast no form, a presence that hummed like memory and regret, trailing behind them like a loyal ghost. The silence, tamed, not erased. Tethered. The Galactic Concord met in stunned assembly. Chancellor Rocktal of the Seraphine Collective whispered, "What did you bring back?" Ilara's voice was calm. "A lesson. The void isn't evil. It was alone. Alone so long it forgot what it meant to be anything else. We showed it struggle, persistence, sacrifice." She looked up at the stars. "It showed us truths we weren't ready for. Now we are." The humans changed after that. Their ships whispered through space, singing songs in forgotten math. Their children dreamed in languages that broke encryption algorithms. They no longer feared the dark. In fact, they spoke to it. Some called them post-human. Others said ascendant. Many just said, they touched the silence, and it touched back. But none denied one truth. Humanity had gone into the worst place in the universe, and come back with a new fire. It started small. Terran medics could now heal things other species didn't even understand. Terran ships bent gravity like origami. Terran soldiers walked into dying stars and returned with passengers made of flame and song. And the greatest change? They shared it, freely, with allies, with enemies, even with those who once mocked them. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They fight for survival. And when they win, they pull the rest of the galaxy up with them. One final message was carved into the Galactic Concord's heart station. We are humanity. We come from Terra, the world that tried to kill us every day. We are what the dark feared. And what the future now hopes for. The silence is listening, so speak wisely. End. Let me know if you'd like a spin-off, prequel, Ilara's early missions, or what happens 1,000 years later. Epilogue, 1,000 years after the silence. Legacy of the Deathworlders. The galaxy no longer feared extinction. Because extinction had learned to fear. It was the age of the second light, a millennium after humanity returned from the void. Stars no longer died without permission. The Concord was now a chorus of thousands of species, bound not by treaties, but by a promise that no world would ever face the dark alone again. And above them all, orbiting a world once called Terra, floated a monument forged from war and wonder. The beacon. A Dyson ring, half complete, half organic, pulsing with a slow heartbeat that echoed across subspace. Not a weapon. A signal. Deep inside the beacon's heart, the Ilara archive pulsed with life. A preserved mind. The last living remnant of the woman who walked into the dark and taught it to feel. She no longer held rank. No armor. No title. Just a voice, recorded, updated, awakened in moments of true need. This was one of those moments. A new species, the Lethari, had arrived. Fast evolving, fireborn, and terrified. Their first contact message was a scream across frequencies. We awakened something in the void. We ran. It followed. Please. Ilara's echo responded instantly. Not with orders. With a simple, familiar truth. You are not alone. We're already coming. Moments later, fleets launched from across the beacon. Not ships in the traditional sense, these were living vessels, bound with silence thread, navigated by empathy-bonded crews who dreamed in formation. They bore symbols older than language. The symbol for Earth. Terra. Home. A Lethari child watched the ships arrive in her sky, streaks of starlight cutting through smoke and chaos. She clutched a data shard, passed down from a long-dead ancestor who told her, "If you ever see the ones who smile through fire, don't run. They are who the dark fears." The ships landed. They opened. And from within stepped the new humans. Some walked on two legs, some floated, some shimmered with borrowed physics, but their eyes held that same impossible fire. The fire that never forgot where it came from. A world of storms. Of teeth. Of death. Of love. A Terran stepped forward, knelt beside the child, and smiled. "Hey," they said softly, offering a hand. "We've been here before, you'll get through this." And the stars burned a little brighter. Final message logged to Galactic MemoryNet. It began with one human, who proved the myths were true. It ends with billions, proving what comes after myths is choice. We were forged in fury. We became a mirror. And now, we are the light that teaches the dark how to dream. End of saga. Would you like a prequel, a side story from another species, or the secret origins of the silence itself? Prequel, before she was the one who smiled, the young Ilara Voss, and the day Terra tried to break her. Before the silence. Before the fleets. Before the myths. There was a girl. Barely 17. Stranded in Sector 8, Pacific Stormwall, on old Earth. She hadn't smiled yet. Mission, Terraforming Ops Cadet Survival Exercise. Duration, 48 hours. Location, Terra's Stormwall, a planetary phenomenon where ocean, wind, tectonics, and biological hell converged in a never-ending superstorm. The kind of place that ate satellites. The instructors said, survive 2 days, get extracted. They didn't say the storm would shift early. They didn't say she'd be alone. Ilara awoke half buried under a tree trunk the size of a gunship, bleeding, her helmet cracked, her bio readout blinking red. Her squad was gone, swept by a rogue wave or scattered by windhawks. No comms. No food. No way out. The smart thing was to wait. But Earth didn't reward smart. Earth rewarded violent, creative spite. Hour 3, she set her own leg with a splint made from bone wood and tore her jacket into ligatures. Hour 6, she fought off a pack of Mirage Panthers using a shattered solar blade and the reflective surface of her helmet as a decoy. Hour 12, the cold came. And she started talking to herself. I could just lie down, let the storm do its thing, no one would blame me. She almost did. But then something howled from the ridge. A shadow, 3 stories tall, chased by wind, eyes glowing like dying stars. She gritted her teeth. Fine, if I die here, I'll bite the storm back. Hour 21, Ilara built a signal tower from wrecked drones and lightning eel glands. Hour 32, she boiled swamp mud for electrolytes and sewed a new boot from predator hide. Hour 44, she climbed a cliff with one working arm, dragging the locator beacon in her teeth. When extraction arrived, she was waiting on the edge of the cliff. Bloody, covered in ash and pollen and insect stings. But alive. Grinning. The officer stepped off the evac shuttle. Name? Ilara Voss, she said. You're alone? Not anymore. That day, her survival record was filed and forgotten. But the instructors whispered to each other. She didn't break. She learned the storm. That one might go further than all of us. They were right. Because it wasn't a war or a monster or a void that made Ilara Voss who she became. It was Earth. Her first, fiercest enemy, and the place she would love forever. From the lost blogs of Terra Cadet Voss. I used to think surviving made me strong. I was wrong. It made me responsible. Want more? I can continue with her first mission off Terra, or her first alien contact, the one where she had to choose between obeying orders or saving an enemy. Prequel, Part 2, her first contact was an enemy. Cadet Alara Voss is Terra's blade. Heart undecided. Location, Outer Rim Survey Colony 914A. Mission, evacuation of civilians during bioplague outbreak. Status, compromised. Hazard, local species, classified as hostile. It was supposed to be routine. Terra's expansion program had protocols: land, scan, quarantine, integrate. But the colony hadn't reported in for 12 days. When the dropship landed, all they found was ash. And something still moving in the dark. Ilara was 19. Technically still a cadet. But she had 3 survival stars and a field promotion pending. The squad called her Stormwalker behind her back. She didn't smile much anymore. The plague wasn't natural. It was a weapon, spores, airborne, reactive to carbon-based neurology. The human team held their breath, locked suits, started scanning. And then came the movement. Slender, 8-limbed, pale armor like polished glass. A Drevian, a species humanity had marked red-level threat during early deep space contact. Taller than her, claws, eyes like jet. Bleeding. And carrying a human child. Her rifle came up automatically. The thing didn't flinch. It knelt, curled its limbs over the unconscious girl, and hissed in Terran speak through a broken translator. She is not infected. I am not weapon. I stayed. The rest of the team shouted in her ear, take the shot. Drevian warforms killed colonies. Do not hesitate. But Ilara hesitated. And looked closer. The creature was riddled with spore burns. Its joints leaking dark sap. A torn Concord field bandage wrapped around its chest. It had protected the child. Used human meds to do it. The standoff stretched seconds into hours. Then the child stirred, whispered, he's nice, and passed out again. Ilara lowered her weapon. Get her to the shuttle, I'll bring the Drevian. Her team exploded with objections. She ignored every one. Because she'd seen worse monsters wearing human uniforms. And she'd learned something back on Terra. Nothing truly dangerous ever looks like it's about to kill you. It looks like it already decided not to. They made it to orbit with 14 survivors. And one enemy no longer marked as one. The Drevian collapsed on the ramp, died 6 hours later. But not before handing Ilara a memory crystal. Inside, logs of him protecting the colonists. Hiding them from his own kind. Begging humans not to shoot when help arrived. Ilara filed the report. Marked it Mercy under fire. Her CO tried to bury it. But the Concorde leaked it. 3 months later, Drevian diplomats contacted Earth. Because of her. Later that year, she stood before a panel of Terran brass. You disobeyed protocol, one said. I applied judgment, she replied. You gambled with human lives. No, Ilara said, I bet on one. She was promoted the next day. And unofficially given a new call sign. The girl who hesitated. Entry from Voss private logbook. Sometimes, what makes you human is the moment you put the gun down first. Would you like the next one? Ilara's first real war, a battle where even she nearly lost her humanity. Or something from the Drevian's point of view? Prequel, Part 3, The Battle That Almost Broke Her. Ilara Voss, Terra's Rising Storm. Location, Caris 5. Operation, Forward Strike, Biofront Echo. Objective, push back the Velid swarm before it reached the twin colonies of Alvex and Thronehold. Outcome, victory. Cost, 82,000 Terran dead. 1 Ilara Voss, forever changed. By now, she was Captain Voss, 23. Young for her rank. Too young, some said. But she had earned the field through decisions most officers wouldn't dare make, and lived with all of them. The Velid swarm was not like the other enemies. It didn't want territory. It didn't negotiate. It didn't even hate. It just ate. Planets, atmospheres, memory. The kind of thing the rest of the galaxy ran from. Terrans? They dug in. The first week was hell. The swarm dropped biocomets into the upper atmosphere, living bombardments, each one cracking open with screeching spines and chemical locusts. Voss's squadron held the eastern ridge of Red Scar Crater, where the ground steamed with living resin and the sky wept acid. They fought in 26-hour shifts. No rest, no reinforcement. And then came day 9, when the command uplink failed. No orders, no orbital data, just static. Some officers panicked, others fled. Voss? She pulled off her helmet and screamed into the wind. We hold until they can bury us standing up. The men and women with her, most half dead already, stood straighter. And they held. Day 14. The ground erupted under them. An Alpha Velid burst through the trench line, towering, armored in its own hive bones, jaws like battleship hulls. Voss went straight for it. She didn't have a plan, just a charge pack, a combat knife, and the insane thought: if I'm going down, it's with my hands in its heart. She lost 2 ribs, her left eye, 6 pints of blood. But she killed it. Not with the knife. With the locator beacon jammed down its throat, pulsing coordinates to the last orbiting gunship above. The strike came down hard, took half the crater with it. And her. They pulled Alara from the wreckage 6 hours later. Heart stopped. Suit torn open. But alive. Because humans on Deathworlds don't die easily. When she woke up in recovery, wrapped in regeneration mesh, breathing through a synth lung, the attending medic whispered, "You broke the Alpha's spine." "No," she rasped. "I just held on until it tripped over me." The galaxy heard about Carice 5. The Velid didn't just lose. They ran. Because for the first time in their swarm mind history, they felt something foreign. Fear. Back on Terra, a new mural appeared in Unity Square, a woman in ruined armor, standing atop a corpse the size of a freighter, holding a beacon like a torch. Beneath it, the inscription. She didn't ask what the odds were. She just asked where to stand. Private log, Alara Voss. Recovery day 23. Carice took more than blood. It tried to take me. But I was raised by storms. I don't break. I just change shape. Next chapter? Her final test, the diplomatic mission that failed, and sparked the first Terran interstellar war. Want to see how Alara handled being outgunned and outnumbered, without firing a single shot? Prequel, Part 4, The War That Began with a Whisper. Alara Voss faces the fire without a gun. Location, Neutral Zone Theta Vale. Mission, Peace Summit with the Varaxi Imperium. Objective, prevent war after Terran mining colony triggered disputed system claim. Status, catastrophic failure until it wasn't. She arrived without a gun. By order. No armor, no escort. Just a clean uniform, her old storm-scorched boots, and the scar over her eye that had become a legend in half the galaxy. The Varaxi were not impressed. They were insectoid titans, towering, iridescent, ancient. Their language was scent and pulse, pheromone and math. Their imperium spanned hundreds of light centuries. They didn't speak to infants. They saw humans as that, children born in a fire pit, savage, loud, temporary. Alara Voss was sent to change their minds. But as the consular wings touched down on the Varaxi listening planes, she knew something was off. Her security team reported nothing back. The atmosphere trembled with low-frequency hums. And the Varaxi delegation refused to exit their towers. She waited. 6 hours. Then 7. Then the sky cracked open with heat signatures, 40 orbital lances, armed, primed, target locked on the Terran diplomatic vessel. The Varaxi had not come to negotiate. They had come to end the war before it began. The Concord back home screamed in panic. "Get out of there. They're going to burn you down. We'll retaliate." Alara sat very still. And said nothing. Then, finally, she stood and walked out of the ship, onto the red glass plains, unarmed. The Varaxi warmind pulsed once. "You do not run?" "I'm from Earth," she said. "We don't run from storms. We build cities in them. They tested her, with sound, with heat. Her skin blistered, her ears bled. Still, she stood. You fear extinction? No, she replied calmly. We fear silence, the kind that follows when no one stands up. She offered them a memory crystal. Inside, Kari's 5. A recording of Ilara Voss diving into a beast 4 times her size. Then Raven's squad's victory over a psychic entity. And finally, a still image. The Drevian, holding the human child. You thought we were just weapons. But we're memory. And choice. And mercy, when it would have been easier to kill. The Varaxi didn't speak. But they blinked. And in that species, blinking meant doubt. They withdrew the lances. A slow, deliberate retreat. Ilara didn't flinch until the last one vanished behind the clouds. Only then did she sit back down, legs shaking, heart pounding, the storm inside finally cracking. Back on Terra, the news reported a near-total failure. But in the next standard cycle, the Varaxi Imperium sent a reply. We will listen. Because you didn't shout. And you didn't run. The Treaty of Thetaveil was signed 7 months later. Ilara never mentioned the panic attack she had afterward. Or the 2 crew members who had to help her off the platform. She just recorded one quiet entry. Personal log, Voss. Thetaveil debrief. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. Like peace. Or mercy. Or the chance to speak before everyone starts bleeding. That mission marked the end of Ilara's career as a soldier. And the start of her rise is something far more dangerous. A Terran diplomat with a soldier's resolve. Want the next? The day the galaxy turned to Ilara Voss to lead, not just the Terrans, but everyone. Prequel, Part 5, the day they asked her to lead the galaxy, Ilara Voss becomes more than human. Date, First Cycle of Unity. Pre-silence. Location, Concord Hall. Echelon Prime. Event, Emergency Coalition Vote, Supergalactic Defense Command Appointment. They didn't want a human. Not really. Even after the Velid War. Even after Thetaveil. Even after Ilara Voss had bled, bargained, and broken herself to hold the line. The Concord still saw humans as new. Too passionate. Too volatile. Too much. But then, the scout relays went dark in the spiral reaches. Stars were being unraveled. Whole systems reduced to gravitational echoes. The silence beyond fire had not arrived yet. But it had stirred. Representatives screamed at each other in the Great Hall. The Karate suggested retreating entire sectors. The Hunin demanded a spiritual cleansing. The Varnik collective uploaded themselves into stasis and refused to wake up. No consensus. No strategy. Just fear. And into that chaos, Ilara Voss walked in. No guards. No fanfare. Just her presence. The chamber stilled. Every species, every world, every voice in the Concord turned. Because when she spoke, she didn't shout. She didn't plead. She promised. You want leadership? Fine. I'll give it to you. Not through politics. Not through fear. But the way my kind always has. Through fire. Through memory. Through choosing to stand where others fall. She stepped onto the central platform. We don't need a vote. We need a backbone. Let it be mine. The room held its breath. And then, one by one, species that once warred with humanity stood. The Drevian. The Seraphine. The Hunin. Even the Varaxi, who spoke only in scent, flooded the chamber with a complex aroma. Respect. Regret. Trust. The vote passed, unanimously. Ilara Voss was named Supergalactic Commander. The first in recorded galactic history. She refused a throne. Took no crown. No armor. Just a dark coat, the same old boots, and her voice. And one new tattoo inked into her forearm. The symbol of Earth. Of pain. Of origin. Message broadcast across the Milky Way, by Commander Voss. Standard time -45 years before the Silence War. We were born in storms. Raised by beasts. Tempered in gravity that would crush most of you. We're not special. We're just the proof that survival can become compassion. If something worse comes, we'll meet it. And if we fall, know this. It will remember we were here. And in the ancient Concord archives, beneath the marble dome where the stars were mapped, they inscribed one line on the black steel wall. When the galaxy trembled, a Terran stood still, and taught the stars how not to break. Would you like the bridge story next? The final calm, when Alara prepares the galaxy for a war no one else believes is real. The last sunrise on Terra before the silence came. Prequel, Part 6, The Last Sunrise on Terra, The Calm Before the Silence. Timeframe, 17 days before first silence contact. Location, Terra, Old Earth, Pacific Wastes. Subject, Alara Voss, Supreme Commander, Final Visit. It was tradition among Terrans to return home before the end. Alara Voss stood alone on the cliffs of the old Pacific Rim, where the oceans had receded and glassy fields shimmered in morning light. Once, this place had boiled, the cascades had bled magma, humanity had nearly lost this world more than once. But Earth had survived. Like her. Now the world was quiet. No war, no engines, just wind. She took off her boots. Let her toes sink into the cooling stone. And watched the sun rise over a dead sea. Her comlink pulsed, silent priority ping. Drevian High Council. Silence anomalies confirmed. 5 new sectors lost. Debris shows no survivors. Decision tree fractures. Awaiting instruction. She closed the message without reply. Then another ping. Child from Hunin 5. My parents say the silence will eat everything. Is that true? Will it eat you too? Alara typed back. No. If it comes for us, I'll be too busy fighting to get eaten. She stayed on Earth for 3 hours. Visited the crater where the last Old Nation warhead fell. Left a stone on her mother's grave, tucked between roots where only her and the wolves knew to go. Sat on the broken steps of the university where she first learned war theory. And finally, on a hill above the ruins of an ancient city called San Francisco, she placed one object in the soil. Her first sidearm. Scarred, empty, with a note wrapped around the grip. If you find this, and I'm not here, you're not alone. We were here. We fought. And we left you stars full of hope. Her shuttle lifted off just as the horizon caught fire with pink and orange clouds. Not a battle. Just beauty. But in Alara's heart, it felt like a goodbye. Aboard flagship Resolve. Location, Deep Void, edge of known space. 17 days later. The silence arrived. It didn't declare war. It existed. And that was enough. Whole fleets blinked out. Time folded. Languages decayed in real time. It moved like absence. It devoured belief. And in the center of it, standing in her bridge, watching everything fall, Alara Voss smiled. It's real. Good. I was afraid we'd waited for nothing. She turned to her crew, human, alien, post-human, synthetic, even a silence echo who chose to stand beside them. We hold the line. We teach the dark our names. And if we burn, let it be bright enough for a new galaxy to be born from the ashes. TOB continued. Want to jump into the Silence War arc now? Or see the unknown battle where the first Silence creature tried to speak to her?